So that was beautiful. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's really a privilege and a pleasure to be able to open the Word with you this morning. And as we do that, would you please join me as we pray that God would just illumine our path for us and help us to get out of this message that we're supposed to get out of it. Gracious God, thank you for our church. Thank you for our faith. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, and Lord, the example that he is to us. And Lord, I just pray that you would open our hearts and minds to what you have for us, that your word would be proclaimed with boldness, and that we would receive it with grace and the sincere desire to apply to our lives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, if you'd open your Bibles to 1 Corinthians 13, as you're probably already aware, we started a series a few weeks ago. We're going to be in Proverbs, and Kenny just kind of sensed the leading of God that we needed to kind of go in a different direction, and that was to spend some time looking at love in light of a lot of the stuff going on in the world around us, that this was a very pertinent topic. And so we changed course and have been looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I think most of us are familiar with it. It's known as the love chapter, and it's probably one of the best known passages amongst all of our friends out there and that we come in contact with. I was kind of taken back when Kenny gave me this particular passage. When he talked about it when we were spending the summer here, I kind of thought that verses 4 and 5 would be kind of breaking up. Like there would be, love is patient, love is kind, and we could probably do weeks on each one of those topics. And I was kind of interested in doing the part about not easily angered, and I mentioned that to Ken, and he said, okay, great. Why don't you do verses 4 and 5? And I looked at it and I thought, whoa, I mean, be careful what you ask for. Because this is such a tremendous passage. As I was thinking about it, it's summer, and how many of you enjoy watermelon in the summer? Okay, I mean, watermelon, and I love watermelon. Well, with a watermelon, the closer you are to the center, the sweeter and juicier it is, right? And then you work your way out towards the rind, and it just kind of loses a little bit. Well, Kenny gave me that prime piece of real estate, so thank you, Kenny. I appreciate that. Now, I have to qualify my remarks this morning with, you'll notice the title of the sermon is How to Love Well. And I do not want to give anybody the impression that I am here as an expert on how to love well. Just the opposite. And so I am very humbled and intimidated by this passage in terms of comparing my own life to what I see here and coming up very, very short. Because I think many of us would have the same feeling. But what I can say is that I want to love well. That is my sincere desire. And if I look back over the course of my Christian life, I would have to say that the lowest points for me have always been when I failed. I remember when I was pastoring full-time, and when there was somebody in the church that there was an interaction with me that didn't go well, and they felt somehow they hadn't been heard, they'd been slighted, that I would grieve that. I would be in a funk for days. And the Holy Spirit would just be driving me to reconcile with that person. And I believe that's God's work in me. So I don't claim to be the expert on loving well, but I would say that my heart is equal to almost anybody here in the desire to love well. That's really what I want. And this passage is so practical with regard to how to do that. So much information here. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let me just read the two verses for you. My translation is the NIV, and it says this. It says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. mean, that's a laundry list. That's a preacher's dream. Just to have just these words and just be able to go in and you don't have to try to figure out what should I study on this. It's just a laundry list of things that this is what you got to know. And so it was just such a pleasure to just be able to get my resources out and open them up and just dig into each of these nuggets that's here for us in terms of what love is and how to apply that to our lives. Now, the first thing that I noticed about the passage, and ironically in the translations that I looked at, none of them did this, but verse 4 begins with love is. And the word agape is there very clearly, and it's in the emphatic position, and it goes on to two qualities. And then the second part of the passage, it does the same thing, and it doesn't do it in the English translations. I don't know why, but it says love is not, to make sure that we understand that there's a clear contrast between what it is and what it isn't. Last week in the leadership class that we're going through on Sunday mornings, we were looking at leadership and Jesus' model of leadership. And as he was explaining the qualities of leadership, he talked about all the things it isn't first. It doesn't seek its own. It's not trying to lord it over other people. It's not hypocritical. It's not any of those things. And then he closes with just one phrase. The greatest among you shall be the servant of all. In the Bible, it's very common to contrast things. Our eyes love contrast. A sunset where you see the vivid colors. Contrast is very important for us visually. And I think it is for us intellectually as well. And so that's exactly what Paul does. He's going to contrast for us what it is and what it isn't. So let's go to Roman numeral 1. Qualities that communicate love more than anything else. Now, if we were to take some time and just kind of share amongst ourselves, what is love? What are the qualities of love? I would imagine we could come up with an enormous amount of qualities, a long, long list of things that we would consider to be loving. And yet, Paul boiled it down to two things. He says, love is patient, love is kind. And I think the simplicity of this is profound for us. And I want to take some time just to open up what these two words really mean, what they're all about, the heart of the issue. And even these two words are in contrast to each other. One is a refraining from action. It's what you don't do. And then the other is very, very aggressive in what you do. Let's look at patience first. Love is patient. Now, the first thing that I was taught as a Christian was never pray for patience. Have any of you heard that before? Do you know why you don't pray for patience? Read James chapter 1. How does God teach you patience? Trials and tribulations. So if you pray for patience, then you're going to get trials and tribulations, because that's how you learn how to do it. I just realized early on that tribulations were going to come anyway, so I didn't need to add insult to injury and pray for it. Patience. Now, the Greek word is literally a compound word, macrothumia. Macro, how many have heard that before? Macro. Big. Long. Thumia is suffering. Patience is the ability to suffer, to endure for a long time. That is one of two of the most important qualities that love has. Now let's think about that for a minute. Love hurts. Does that sound like a country song? Love hurts. God. If you've ever loved, you know that that's the case. Love involves heartache. Just ask God. For God so loved the world that what? He gave His only Son. I cannot imagine God watching His Son perish on the cross. And those hours That's how much He loves us. That's His patience towards us. So let's look at it. Literally, it means macrothumia, it means long-suffering. Patience is the restraint in times of tension and disappointment. It's not reacting negatively. And this is something that I think every one of us can apply every single day. I teach 6th graders. If you want to learn patience, take my job. Please, take my job. Mr. Windsor, where do I put my name? On the top line there where it says name. Oh, Mr. Windsor, where do I put Dave? Go to the right and you'll see a line and it says Dave. Okay. Now, where do I put my name again? Left-hand side. Get Dave! Right, okay, and then and I had kids that will basically ask the same question. Did I get that right? Yes, you did. Okay. And because they're so insecure, they just want to be, I am not a patient person. I'm sorry. I am not. And so being in that environment is so helpful. Thank you, Jesus, for putting me there. Because on a good day, I will be patient and I will leave just going, wow, God is real, God is alive. On other days, I'll just say, Lord, take me home now. I want you to think about people in your life. And when a person's impatient towards you, how does that make you feel? Go back to when you were a kid growing up, and a coach. No, not that way, this way. No. And they get angry and they get frustrated. And how do you feel? You get smaller and smaller and smaller. Impatience makes us feel very unimportant, that we have little value, that basically we're less than nothing, we're a burden, we're a pain. Patience, and this is so profound to me, patience is the ability to restrain from that, inflicting that upon another person. Now the reality is, and Jesus talked about this a great deal, didn't he? How perfect are any of you? Not very perfect, are we? And yet we somehow expect others to be more perfect than we expect of ourselves. And when they don't meet our expectations, we become impatient and we rant and we rave and we do these things. That's not what love does. One of the greatest qualities of love is the ability to be patient. Think about that with your kids. Think about that on the highway. Think about that in the store. I mean, we live in this instant gratification culture, don't we? You have to wait more than 5 minutes at Starbucks. How many of you are angry and frustrated? What's going on? Why don't they get more people? What's going on with that? As a matter of fact, the corporate world knows that. The Ralphs I shop at, haven't seen you there for a while. Don, is everything okay? You need to do the store up. I see Don there, my local Ralphs all the time. But hey, we need help. They don't want the line to be more than 1 or 2 people. Why? Because we're so impatient. But Christian love is long-suffering. It endures a long time. Second thing that Paul mentions is he says love is kind. I just kind of thought this would be a no-brainer, kindness. Wow. But the word is not used very frequently in the New Testament. And I had a hard time getting my mind around what it meant. Because when I think of kindness, I think of just these wonderful gestures of warmth and affection. And the real heart of the word, that's not what it meant. Basically, what it means is to be decent, to be honest. The word that it's most closely associated with is the word grace. Patience is the refraining from inflicting wounds on people because of their imperfections. Grace is the action of loving them in spite of it. Patience is a passive idea. This idea of kindness is a very active idea. It's not just not saying something. Like the person's an idiot and you just, well, I didn't say he was an idiot, therefore I loved him. No. It's embracing him in the midst of that. It's loving him. It's a improving, it's coming alongside of them, even in the time that they're the least lovable. Kindness is action in times of need and vulnerability. I want you to think about, again, people that have been kind to you. Now, people are kind a lot. It was kind of funny. I'm going to drive up to Oregon, so I wanted to get a book on tape, and I have some gift cards from Barnes & Noble. So I was trying to get in, and there were a lot of people coming and going at the same time. And one of the guys opened the door, and people just kept coming, and he's holding the door. So I got to the door, I said, you go, no, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. We were tripping over each other and blocking the door, trying to be kind to each other. So kindness is around us. But when you appreciate it most is when you're most vulnerable, when you're most in need of it. You know what I'm talking about? It's when your car's broken down and you're afraid because you don't know where you are, you're not sure how to get it fixed, all of a sudden it's a nightmare come true, and then someone comes and says, hey, I noticed something's wrong. Do you need any help? Oh my goodness. And it's not just, do you need help? Oh, wow, okay, well, I'll pray for you, and then off they go. But they get out their phone and say, you know what, I've got AAA, I can call them, I'll wait until they get here, I'll make sure that you're sick. That's kindness. That's meeting a person at their point of greatest vulnerability, their greatest need, and meeting it. How does that make you feel? I mean, it humbles me, frankly, but it's like, wow. And kindness makes us kind. When people are kind, it disarms the situation. When people are impatient and harsh, that escalates just as rapidly. But kindness is an amazing catalyst to helping others do the same thing. So, what communicates love better than anything else? If you just leave her with two things this morning, if you're going to focus on two, be patient, be kind. Kindness is going out of your way to help someone, even at their most vulnerable time. Then Paul shifts gears, and he contrasts this. I would love that he would just stop there. Then he starts giving us this list of things that, ouch, ooh, bang, boom. This is what love isn't. Roman numeral number 2. Qualities that inhibit love more than anything else. If you want to squash it, if you want to run it right out of town, these are the things to do. And as I read this list, I think all of us are going to know people that are like this. And they might even be us. And like, why don't they get this? I don't know. Okay, first of all, Paul says, he uses, love does not envy. I don't really like that translation because what the word literally means is it's not overzealous. What I get from that, love is not smothering. Have you ever known somebody like that? Oh, I love you so much. I had an aunt that way. Oh, dude, come over here. Just kissing and just like, come here and just, and it's like, ugh. And when I got to junior high, she would do that, ugh. And we've got people that are so overly involved in our lives, they don't give us any space. I think I was talking to somebody about a church they had attended, and they mentioned that they went there, and the people were so overzealous that it freaked them out. Now, I think we should be friendly. I think we should be kind. How are you? And greet them. But recognize that there's boundaries and there's space, and they probably don't want to become your best friend in the first 5 minutes and they're walking through the door. And if they do, be very careful. Love is not this overzealous, smothering, all-consuming thing. Because normally when people are that way, are they doing it for the sake of the person or for themselves? Okay? And that's the one quality that all of these inhibitors have. It's all about the other person. It's all about the person trying to do it, not the person that's the object of the love. Whereas the things that are catalysts for love, it's all about the other person. It's caring and being mindful of their needs and what they want. Whereas all these negatives, I think you'll all see what they have in common, is it's self-centered. So it's not envious. It doesn't smother people. It's not overzealous. And the second thing is love is not boastful. It's the idea of putting yourself on a higher plateau. There was a thing called transactional analysis in the 60s and 70s. It was, I had a psychology class. Maybe some of you are aware of it. There's three persons in all of us. There's the adult, the parent, and the child. And the goal of transactional analysis is that we all interact as adults. We treat each other as equals. But what happens most times is we take on a parent role. And the parent is always talking down. You need to do this, you need to do that, da, 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 da. And the child is the one that feels afraid and intimidated and stuff like that. And it goes on into adulthood. And I saw something on Facebook, is every time I open my mouth, I hear my mother. That freaks me out. I love my mom, she was a wonderful person, but there were a lot of times I said, I don't want to be like my mom in that regard. And I am exactly like her. My mom would think, Everett Scott, is that you teaching that 6th grade class, or is that me? Because I've got her expressions and her mannerisms down perfectly. But that's not what love is. Love is not this boastful thing. It doesn't over-exaggerate its accomplishments. It's not trying to make yourself better than what you actually are. But how often do we do that? How often are we eager to talk about what we did right, and we try to cover up the things that we did wrong? Love is not proud. And this is one of those words that you just love looking at, because what the word literally means is puffed up. You ever seen a blowfish? It's a little fish, and all of a sudden, when an enemy comes, it just blows itself up. This big, intimidating thing that's all air, that you could pop with a needle, but it just puffs itself up. And I thought, wow, that's an amazing image. Because here we are at church. We talk about being real. We talk about loving each other. And yet, how many of us puff up when we walk through the door? Hey, how are you? I'm praying for you. You look so nice this morning. I told you that. Hey, Kenny, man, I've learned so much stuff in God's Word today. I mean, it's just amazing. Thank you so much for giving us that reading, because I'm reading every day, man. No, I'm not. And, I love that. There was a thing in Leadership Magazine where a pastor's at the door and he sees a guy coming up. And he goes, oh, there's Bob. Bob, dear Lord, please be with Bob. Hey, Bob, been praying for you. That's puffing yourself up. Being arrogant. Trying to make yourself more than what you are. Love doesn't do that. Love, puffed up, pretentious, presenting an overly positive image of oneself. I think about that. Think about when we get that way, how dishonest we become, and what hope is there for real intimacy and real trust and the expression of kindness. It inhibits it. Love's not rude. Literally, the absence of common courtesy. How many of you were raised with manners? And I remember my mom being mortified if I put my elbows on the table during dinner. And I go, do you do that at your friend's house? Do you do that when you go out into public? Maybe. No! Do you know what that makes me look like? That I'm the worst mother that ever lived. I go, really? They had this season, say please, say thank you. I remember that just being drummed into me. I have these mores that were instilled in me. Love forgets them. Love is just concerned about what it wants. Selfishness is what you want when you want it, and you forget good common manners. Common sense, decency. Because it's not about anybody else, it's all about you. Love is not self-seeking. I think Paul says, does not seek its own. If you want to love somebody, you got to get out of the way. That's not easy to do. Love is not easily angered. Now again, there were a lot of words that Paul could use there, and I was taken back because, as I told Ken, I said, that's not what I really want to zero in on, and it didn't mean what I thought it meant. What it literally means is this idea of being stimulated or provoked, having a hair trigger. And I want to talk more about that in a little bit. But anger and love are almost antithetical. They're mutually exclusive to a degree, and I want to explain that further in just a little bit. And then the last one, love is not keeping score. And this one really struck me. I took some counseling classes at Biola and at Talbot in seminary, and Norm Wright was a very well-known counselor, Christian counselor. And I had the privilege of having him for a couple of classes. And he talked about this in great detail. When you have a couple come in, usually they're at a breaking point. They're not there because things are going well, right? They're there because things are not going well. And usually one is there against their will because they don't want to be there. The other one says, if you don't go, we're done, and that's it. So it's kind of the last stop before terminating the relationship. And he said something that was profound. He says, basically, as a counselor, the first thing you got to do is, why are you here? What's the point? What's going on? And he said, invariably, what will happen, and this is where you know the relationship's in a lot of trouble, you'll ask the wife to say, so, what's going on? She'll say, he does this, he won't do this, da-da-da. And out comes the list of all the things that their spouse is not doing or is doing that just really took them off. And you talk to the husband. Oh, yeah, that's right, okay. It's all about me, isn't it? Well, what about you? Boom, boom, boom. Some of you know what I mean? And it's not just marriage. It's in any relationship. When you start having an argument, and you go to someone and you say, it really takes me off when you, well, what about you? What about when you do this? Okay, what have they done? They're keeping a list. That's what it literally means. Making a list of things gone wrong. Gizmo. Logic. Keeping an account. And once you started keeping account and keep track, what are you doing? You're building a dossier, evidence, to justify not loving that person anymore. I don't need to love this person because look at all the things that they have done or not done that have hurt me. And once you have that list, you've got your walking papers. It's not just in marriage. It's with a person at work. I've had parents do that to me as a teacher at school. He's done this, and this, and this. They've got their list, and they're just trying to justify having their kid moved out of my class or getting me in trouble with the principal, whatever. They've got their list. Love doesn't do that. And does that mean that we just kind of are lifeless, spineless jellyfish in relationships? Oh, just these dummies that just keep bouncing back, punch me, and I come back. No. That's why I want to get into anger just a second here. But it's not so we keep track of it so we can somehow find a way out of being obligated to love that person anymore. That's not what God's about. That's not what Christian love is about. We need a way to deal with that. So what love is patient. Love is kind. It is those two things. If you do those two things, you'll be walking the gospel life. But when you neglect to do those things, then it will manifest itself in several ways that Paul talked about, and all of those things will inhibit love. It will drive people away. It will repel them, which is just the opposite of what God wants for us. Now, I do want to zero in on this one, anger. Zeroing in on anger. Because I think anger is one of the most misunderstood emotions in our arsenal. Sadness, happiness, fear, those things, but anger is very, very complex. Very complex. Paul says in Ephesians, in your anger, do not sin. How many of you believe that to be angry as a Christian is sinful? Or have thought that at some point? Anybody? I mean, if I get angry, then I've sinned. I've lost. I'm outside of the will of God. I'm outside of the fruit of the Spirit. That's not okay. But then I read this verse. In your anger, don't sin. Other translations said, be angry, but don't sin. As though somehow anger is an appropriate emotion. And it is, at times. But it is possible to be angry and sin. So Paul is going to explain how to not do that. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Now, a lot of people will say that you need to talk to someone. And that's not always a good idea. They're still upset. Well, we need to talk about it right now. This Bible says don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. Okay? I think there's times where you need to reconcile with that person or try to do that. There's other times to give them some space. But how about you? Are you still angry? Have you let it go? Because sometimes the other person won't give you the time of day. You got to let it go. If you let it simmer, if you let it fester, well, what happens? Do not give the devil a foothold. That's the only place I find that idea of giving the devil a foothold. A place where he can get inside and do a lot of damage. That's the only place I find it. So what's the deal with anger? I want to give you a metaphor, an analogy that I think suits this pretty well. And I'd like you to kind of look at anger as it is serving as your emotional immune system. We have a physical body with a physical immune system, and when something attacks your physical body, a healthy body will respond with white blood cells and all kinds of things, and it'll send in the reinforcements. That will fight. And when your body isn't able to do that on its own, your doctor will give you other things to aid your immune system, to fight off that infection. Because if you don't, it will overcome you and destroy you. That's what the physical immune system does. But how many of you recognize that you're not just a physical being, but that you're also an emotional being? Right? We all have emotions. Now, some of us are more emotional than others, but we all have them. Some of us have learned strategies to kind of push them way, way down. Is that healthy? No, it's not. Okay? Anger is our emotional immune system. It's what triggers the alert that we need to do something. We need to take corrective action. And that's why anger is a very, very good thing. Because without it, you can't be a healthy human being. Did God ever get angry? He does. Jesus, when he walked into the temple, did he get upset? Yes. And did he take corrective action? Yes, he did. Anger is a good thing. But it can also be a destructive thing. So let's look at the difference. B, positively, well, first of all, it's our immune system. It's triggered by fear or sadness. Now, the best way to see it is when we're still young. When kids are real little, 1, 2 years of age. Well, even 2, they're getting to the point where they understand this. They can become a little manipulative. But a 1-year-old, they're playing with something, and they're really happy and content, and you take away the source of their happiness, what will they do? They'll cry, right? They'll get sad. And they'll cry, they'll pout, and they'll cry, and they'll cry, and they'll be sad, because that's what they're feeling. That's a natural reaction. Isn't it okay to get sad when you lose something? When you face disappointment? That's legitimate. It's okay to get sad when you face disappointment. Haven't you recognized that this world is full of disappointment? How old do you have to be before you learn that? Kids learn it before they even remember anything. They get sad. And then as a parent or a loved one or someone would come alongside, we pick them up, and they go, oh. Ha-ha. And they start figuring it out. I get sad, I cry, and they pick me up. And and they love me, and I become the center of their world. Yeah, I like that. Last visit up to Oregon to see my grandson, Raleigh. Raleigh, getting close to 1 year old, he's kind of picking up on this now. So basically his mom had to go make dinner, and here, Grandpa, you take him. Okay, so I've got Raleigh. Raleigh is looking at me, and he's like that, and then he's going, wait a second, this is not my normal circumstance. What's going on? He looks around and he sees Mom going out in the kitchen, and he got sad. Now, is that normal for a kid to get sad when they see their parent leaving? Yeah, he got sad. Oh, Mama, 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 Mama. And normally what happened, and whether it's good or bad, Mama comes, takes him, and not this time. She was really determined to make dinner. Grandpa has to figure it out. So I'm just thinking, okay, well, I took him outside. I took him over to the house next door where my daughter lives, and we're on the porch. He's not sad anymore. He's mad. He's angry. What am I with this goateed, ugly guy for? I want my mom! She's got milk. She's got a nice, warm bud. She's on, and this guy has none of that stuff. And it was funny because he'd be there. It wasn't the sad kind. He was, man, I'm mad, I'm so mad, I'm so mad. Then he forgot he was mad. No, I'm mad, On and on. Okay? So, positively, anger protects boundaries and empowers us to right wrongs. When you feel angry, that's not a bad thing. Usually it's the result that somebody's violated a boundary, they've not treated you with respect, they've done something, or there's an injustice. Think about if there was no anger in the world. People would get away with murder, literally. So anger is something that helps us to offset that. But negatively, when it's in the flesh, when it's all about me and not trying to right the situation, anger will violate boundaries, and it empowers us to avenge wrongs. It gives us a sense of entitlement. Think about what the emotion of anger does in you just physiologically. It releases chemicals into your bloodstream that make you very aggressive and very assertive. And that's why it can become addicting. Because anger, when it's unleashed, man, there's a tiger in all of us that comes out, and we kind of like, whoa, I feel in control. And isn't that what most of us want? Don't most of us want to feel in charge, in control? Anger gives us that green light. The problem is in the flesh, we go way beyond the reasonable limits, and we do all kinds of destruction. Anger basically tells people to back off. It makes them go into a fortress and protect themselves. That's not always the best thing. Now, how do we control it? How do we counteract the negative influence of anger? And this is one of the most profound things I've ever learned. Is that what happens is we learn over the course of our adulthood to skip over the intermediary phases. One of the things I don't like about Western medicine is that it's primarily symptom-based, isn't it? You go to a doctor and they ask you, what's wrong? So my back hurts. A lot of times they'll, okay, well, let's figure out what's causing that. But they'll prescribe medicine right then and there. They don't want you to be in pain. And I'm all for that. I don't want to be in pain. But it's about treating symptoms, not causes. And when you only treat symptoms, the cause just sits there. It's going on and on and on. And it needs to go. We need to treat the symptom. Anger is a symptom of something. An infection is a symptom of something. We need to find out what that is. So, to keep anger in check, you need to fully understand the trigger first. Why am I feeling this way? Now, the downside of anger is that you stop thinking, don't you? You just go off. I mean, how many of you done things that you regret and you can't believe you did it, but you know, the rationale is I was angry. It's like a stone that starts rolling downhill. It's got momentum, and it's kind of like once it's unleashed, watch out. So the way that we can be angry but not sin is when we understand truly what has made us angry, what's made us upset. Was it sadness? Think about it. In your most intimate relationships with your kids, with your parents, with your best friend, and you get angry at them, think back. What really is it about? They disappointed you. They hurt you. But it's easier to react with anger because that empowers us. But the reality is, in love, the best way to approach someone is instead of saying, you ticked me off and you did that and I hate you for doing it, what happens? The person, whoa, 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 and then they start defending themselves. Whole different scenario opens up. You know, like, dude, I gotta be honest with you. You know, yesterday I remember this happened at camp. We had this skit, Reggie and the Colonel, and Reggie was this, you know, and there's birds in the forest, and they all have, you know, different eggs and different symptoms. And there was this one girl, that wonderful girl that I went to school with at Biola, but you know, it's basically a slam. We said things and put people down, and somehow thought it was funny, and we said something to the fact that it's the only bird in the forest that doesn't have a mate. And everybody laughed and stuff like that. And she was a great sport. She laughed and stuff like that. Later that night after the campfire, we're walking back, and she came up and said, dude, can I talk to you about tonight's skit? I'm like, I mean, somebody's feelings are hurt, you know. I was like, oh my gosh. And she said, dude, my feelings were hurt. She said, dude, my whole life, I've wanted someone to love, to care about. She said, I'm 23 years old, and I've never had that experience. And tonight, you touched on the most vulnerable part of my life in front of everybody. And I laughed. But dude, you got to know that inside, I wish I could have found a hole and jumped in and never come out. What she exposed to me was her sadness. I couldn't get defensive. I couldn't defend myself. There was nothing to defend. She basically said, this is what happened. And I understand you're trying to be funny, and I understand, but this is what it did to me. Well, that opened up, what an amazing conversation we had. The power of reconciliation and God's love just overflowed. Because she got in touch with what she was really upset about, instead of just going off and off. So what is it what caused you to get angry? Was it sadness? Were you afraid? You see now with adults, haven't you, with their kids? The kid runs off across the street. How does the parent initially react? Oh, sweetheart, I was so afraid when you jumped out into traffic. And so, no, they grab him and they shake him and say, what were you thinking? What were you doing? They get angry. But what were they really feeling? Fear. And that's how they express it. So I hope that'll help a little bit with that very complex action. I want to wrap things up. If the worship team would come. One idea, one thought that I think really brings this whole talk home. Gosh, it was maybe 5 years ago now. One of the great guys in the Free Church. We're in Evangelical Free Church now, and his name was Wally Norling. Wally was our superintendent and just this amazing man. He was Scandinavian, and apparently, being Norwegian, they're famous for not expressing emotion or feelings, and that was true of Wally. You never knew what he was thinking or feeling. He was pretty much a Spartan guy emotionally. But he was an amazing communicator, amazing team builder, all this different stuff. And when he passed away, the funeral was held at the Free Church in Fullerton. The place was packed. There were thousands of people at his funeral. And one of my best friends had been touched by his life, and as he got up in his eulogy, he shared a quote that I've never forgotten. This is by Maya Angelou, and she says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that has haunted me as a 6th grade teacher ever since I started. Because they're not going to remember what I said. They're not really going to remember what I did, but what every kid will remember when they leave my class is how did I make them feel. And so as we close today, I want to ask you 3 questions. And I want to quantify or one question. But first of all, love, genuine love, Christian love that we see here in 1 Corinthians, it makes others feel valued. I had an uncle, he had 7 kids. They were all jocks, they were all everything I wasn't. But my Uncle Bob would come and he'd sit down, and as busy as he was with his stuff, he basically made me feel valued. He'd ask me about my day. He'd ask me what I was doing in school. And even though I wasn't a jock and winning scholarships to Stanford like his sons were and stuff like that, it mattered to him that I was the star of the play or that I was in student government. I'll never forget that. I felt valued. It makes others feel secure. Love doesn't have people guessing. They don't have to measure up. They don't have to prove themselves. That was one of Wally's great things. You've got nothing to prove. Love frees people to that. You don't have to prove anything. You're okay as you are. And then love makes others feel comfortable. Gets rid of the tension. Gets rid of the awkwardness. So the question is, how are you making others feel? Now, I don't think you can make anyone feel a certain way, so I need to kind of qualify that. But there is a point where we've got to own our actions. And if Kenny and I were having coffee, and Kenny, one of my favorite expressions is, if you hear it from several people, it could be true. If people are saying, I just don't feel comfortable around you, or this, that, or the other, man, I can't, people are so stupid. How do people get that impression? Because I'm the nicest guy I know. Not the approach. Okay, that's where you start getting puffed up, all those things. Love lets down the barriers. Love wants others to feel loved, secure, and comfortable. And will take the measures necessary to accomplish that. And that's my prayer for us in the church. So we'll continue to grow in that. This is a loving place, guys. I've been in several churches. And I've made mistakes here. I've offended some of you. And the grace that you've expressed to me, and coming not in anger, but with just the fact that it hurt my feelings when you did this, when you did that. I mean, I am just so appreciative of the environment that we have. And I hope today will go a long ways to just helping that improve and grow. Let me pray. Father, thank you for your word, and I thank you for how practical it is. And I pray, Lord, that even now that just one idea from the message will be attaching itself to each of our hearts, one thing that we can do to be more loving for your sake, for the sake of our family, for the sake of our church, for the sake of our community. Lord, thank you for loving us the way you do, for the example that you are. And now help us to worship you, to love you the way you deserve to be loved. In Jesus' name, amen.